Adriana, thank you ever so much for joining us today on this roundtable discussion. These amazing facilities, so Avian Tech, kindly hosted here by Smart Technologies. But for our listeners and for the audience out there, if we just go around the table, just introduce yourself, a brief synopsis really of your journey in education that's led you to this point.
Brilliant. My name's Guy Colbrook. I'm currently Head of Digital Literacy at Repton Dubai. This is my 11th year as Head of Computing, and during that time I've worked in Dubai and prep schools and secondary schools in the UK and out here in Dubai. We're currently working on a number of projects. One is introducing Smart into our Key Stage 2 classrooms to join with our FS1, FS2 and Key Stage 1 classrooms. And we're also on a journey as well looking at Apple devices, so working towards becoming an Apple distinguished school and introducing lots of other technologies into our computing lessons and our STEM lessons as well.
We'll have quite a bit to chat about. I am Dr. Adriana Chestnut. I am the founding principal of Liwa International Al Qatara School. We're an American curriculum school in Al Ain. So I had a chance to journey down to Dubai today. We're K-6 currently. We've implemented Smart in all of our classrooms. So we actually earned their Distinguished Award this year for Smart Technology. We also are an Apple school. So we have full implementation of Apple devices one-on-one for all of our students and also for our staff as well. So for my journey in education, this is year 12 as a principal for me. And in majority of the schools that I've had a chance of leading, both in the US and here, we've had smart devices. And so I've been on quite the journey. I've been able to see quite a bit of evolution within Smart and within the programs. And so we're very excited to have them again and making that decision to have them here at our school as we open this year with Liwa Qatar.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both ever so much for joining me today. I suppose the one question that sticks out then, why Smart? With all these other technologies now, we can almost say the market's saturated. There's so much choice out there. You know, Adriana, what made you, let's say, stick with Smart?
I think as we were opening the new school, you look at sustainability and you look at a product that you can trust. And so, of course, as you mentioned, the market is very saturated. There are a million smartboard options. There are a million interactive boards and whiteboards, and they have panels now that can project on any surface. We wanted something that would sustain and that would last and that would be reliable for our students and for our staff. I also wanted to make sure that we had professional development opportunities available for our staff because with anything we introduce, I want to make sure there's full implementation, and implementation comes with support. And so we saw the offering of Smart. We had to make sure that we were making an informed decision. So I met with many vendors, many different companies. I was familiar with Smart myself as both a teacher and a leader in the States, and then having them at some schools here in the UAE. So honestly, it was an easy choice for us. It was one of the first ones that I brought to the table in terms of when I know that we need an interactive board. And it's a choice that I'm very happy that we made. Honestly, the staff is finding a really good time interacting with them and working with them. And so we've actually been able to bring it to several of our other school groups, and the different schools that we're working with have been able to come into our campus and see how we're utilizing the smart boards.
Amazing. So what about yourself, Guy? Obviously, you've got experience, different schools across the UK, UAE. What made you choose Smart Technologies and smart boards for Repton?
I think it's the ease of use. They've been around for a number of years, and I think having a tool that teachers can use without having to think about it. For instance, you can pick up a pen, it knows it's a pen. Your finger is your finger, so you can move objects, and then your hand being the eraser. Whereas other competitors, it's a little less intuitive. You have to select the tool you're using, and it just requires teachers to think sometimes, oh, what do I need to do? Whereas Smart just lets them do the job that they are there to do, which is to teach the children. And having the facility for multiple people to come up and interact with the screen at the same time is a lovely opportunity for collaboration. And similar to you, Adriana, looking at competitors before going with Smart out here in Dubai, you've tried them, I've tried them. Nothing compares in the sense of its ease of use. And as you said, it's a trusted brand. They were the instigator, if you like, of interactive whiteboards all those years ago. And they've always been at the forefront. And although there are other interactive panels, as you said, saturated, thinking back to Guest this year, when I think I counted 40 different companies that I'd never heard of before offering these. Another sort of thing that makes you want to go to Smart is the education, the pedagogy behind it. So instead of just being an interactive screen, it has the pedagogy behind it. There are resources, there are, as you said earlier, things you can work towards in CPD. There are school accreditations you can work towards. So having that backing, if you like, that you're buying a product, but you're going to be looked after as well as a customer, and be able to support your staff and support your pupils and give them an interesting and varied curriculum using some wonderful technology. And as you mentioned, sustainability is something we're so keen to look at. And with projector bulbs not lasting as long as they should, having sort of a 10-year warranty on these screens means that you know it's going to be around for a while. And obviously with it turning off as well after a certain amount of time, like your TVs at home, again, helps you to minimize the energy you're using as well. And another thing that I particularly like about the smart interactive panels is you can see them in the room, even when it's as sunny as it is in here, Dubai. Sometimes projectors, when it's as sunny as it is here, you can't see what's on the screen.
Yeah, and we all know the cost of a projector bulb, don't we?
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
It's more than the projector. Yeah. It's more than the projector.
It really is. What's interesting there, obviously, you mentioned then like the ambitions at Repton and obviously the school you're at, having a sort of the lower end of the curriculum, as it were, and the students we have. And I've been lucky to have different conversations with individuals that talk about at what age do we want to introduce technology to students? And so I'm just curious from your side, if you're both planning on doing it, there must be a reason behind this. There must be something that gears towards, you mentioned pedagogy or curriculum, or more importantly, engagement. So I'm really curious to kind of peel back the reasons why you think it's going to be valuable lower down the school.
And that's it. I'll go back to the collaboration that I mentioned earlier, being able to have pupils to come up in groups, work on an activity together, or working on their device. With the two-way interaction we have with screen mirroring or a Lumio activity, it means that every child in the class can be involved in an activity at the same time. No longer do they need to wait their turn and put their hand up. They can all be working at the same time, so everyone is learning at the same time. Nobody is having to wait for their turn. And having that flexibility, if you like, to use the smart board and their device as well to access the content on the smart board is a really great opportunity for collaboration and for them to develop their learning, so they're not waiting for their turn. But I don't know, have you had a similar...
I agree, and I think gone are the days of us teaching the way that we want the students to learn. We have to teach how they're learning. We have to adapt to them. So it wasn't an option for us to not include it in all grade levels. And so we even have a nursery in our school. The nursery has smart boards as well. And so I have a 1-year-old at home. He will grab my phone and begin swiping. And so they're already immersed into a world that is full of technology and rich with technology. For us, it was a matter of increasing accountability for our student learners, including KG. So that means when a teacher is opening a lesson, when we talk about Lumio, we talk about integration, this means that all students have a chance to voice. That means all students have a chance to interact with the lesson. And before, that wouldn't have always happened, right? It's always the 5 students who raise their hand the most frequently. They're the ones who get to speak the most. But with SMART, everyone has an opportunity. I think it increases the access that students have to learning. And then I think for teachers as well, holds them more accountable to what types of lessons they're putting out for the students. We've made the bold move. Our teachers no longer turn in lesson plans. And so what they turn in now are their presentations. So we're looking at what are your students seeing? We want to enhance that experience for our students. We don't need you to spend hours and hours writing a paper that only we see, that the students won't have a chance to interact with, but we want to see what are your students looking at each day when you're teaching and how are they learning. And so I think you kind of shift the focus when you have technology to support that vision and really look at things through the lens of your students. And so we have it in every classroom, and it's really helped. And actually, if you go in the classrooms, you'll see the students. If the teachers has an issue and they're trying to troubleshoot, in every classroom, it never fails, even kindergarten, they're like, click the blue X at the top, and then you need to swipe over. And so the students are really learning that process as we catch up to them, because they're more advanced in technology than we are sometimes. And so it's been a great tool.
So what's been the impact for you going from sort of the traditional lesson plan to presenting sort of the content? What impacts that have for your teachers?
I think aside from the time-saving measures, of course, we've seen more robust presentations. And so we've seen the shift, again, where they're able to look at how students are learning and what they're putting in front of them. Because the presentations are for the students, right? The lesson plans was really for admin and for teachers. So they might complete it. It becomes more of a compliance issue. Versus if they're focusing on Lumio, they're focusing on their smart activities. They're focusing on interactive ways to teach and engage with students. We've seen a very positive impact. And for the students, I think more than anything, is making a huge difference.
Amazing. You mentioned something there, both of you mentioned this, Lumio. Like, we associate smart with smartboards, don't we? It's an interesting thing. Like you talk about coining the phrase, like just Google it. It's like, you see, I think smart, I've got the monopoly over that term. It's like, it's a smartboard. It's like, okay, good for you. But Lumio, in this case, you both mentioned it. What's Lumio?
So Lumio, it used to be called Smart Learning Suite Online, I think, a couple of years ago. And that's the online resource that Smart use for creating interactive and engaging content. So we were speaking, both of us there, just about children having a voice, and there's a brilliant activity called Shout It Out, and that activity allows every pupil to have their voice. So you will pose a question to your class, pupils will access this website on their device, and they will give their answer, and then you can have a discussion. And again, it means every child is learning, everyone is able to voice their opinions. And another wonderful thing about Lumio is there are lots of varied activities. So as well as Shout It Out, which enables every child to speak, there are sorting activities, quiz activities, matching activities, and I like to use these as plenaries and starters to do as a progress check. So sometimes I'll do the same activity at the beginning that I would at the end. So I can see what pupils didn't know at the beginning, they hopefully do at the end of the lesson. So giving them a task that they may not have seen before, maybe giving them a question that they can do so that they have some success, but then the other 9 out of the 10 questions are things they are going to learn in that lesson. And then hopefully they can appreciate from the start of the lesson to the end that they've made great progress and they've learned something new, and they're very excited by that, particularly about monster quizzes. I don't know if you've had a similar situation there. I love a good monster quiz, and the children love it as well.
The students love it. I think it's just a tool belt for our teachers. And so once they're looking at what they're teaching and how they want to interact with the students, Lumio just gives them different tools to do just that. And so it might be a spinner, it might be writing paper, it might be a math game, it might be, it's a plethora of things. And the thing that we love is ever evolving. And so we might log in next week and you'll see something completely different you haven't seen before. But Shout It Out is one of our school's favorites, of course. We see it a lot, as you mentioned, for plenaries and starters. And then the thing I enjoy about it as an administrator, we're able to take that data so the teacher can take a snapshot of what the students are saying, how they're responding. Whereas in a traditional setting, if you're just relying on students raising their hands and actually shouting out answers, as the title indicates, you don't track that data. Versus the Shout It Out, you can capture it. You can see what each student is saying. You can see how they're responding. You can see how many times they're responding. So it becomes a tool that they can use to help in their instruction.
It sounds fantastic. Paint the picture for me then, because let's say there's people going to be watching and listening to this, no idea, never used this. I'm going to say I have OneNote, I have a projector. That's what my school offers me, and there's some of the same. And then in our school we've got other boards, as it were. We've had this conversation, but there's going to be people out there and principals out there and budget holders out there listening to this and might be like, right, I'm interested. But what does it look like in the classroom? In terms of, we've talked about this collaboration, but if you paint the picture for me, how is a teacher going to be using it? How do I get this information up there? How is it that every student is engaged with this?
I think quite a nice thing about Lumio is there are lots of teacher ready-made activities, so you don't need to start from scratch. So as we mentioned earlier, with the lesson planning taking up lots of time, having resources that have been created by other teachers that you can use in the classroom saves a lot of time, and it means that it's been tested in other classrooms, so it's going to work because Smart approve and check content before it is released onto the community. Thinking about the activities that you can create, the wonderful thing is once you've created it, you can save it, and you can also now share it with your community. So it's not just your resource, it's your classes, your schools, the smart world. If you want to, you can share the activities you've created with them. So as I said, I tend to use the gamification games, which is what the title they've given them, for starters and plenaries to assess progress. But there are also collaborative spaces that you can set up. So groups can be working on an activity together. On your device, you can be monitoring their contributions. It's got attribution, so you can see who's done what, which again is brilliant when you're working in groups, because as we know, sometimes in groups, there is someone that will do everything. And this way you can see who has done what. So no one can sit back and let their teammates do it. So it's a brilliant skill here. And as we've been speaking a lot today about changing our approach to teaching, we're not just teaching knowledge, we're teaching skills, and being able to develop those critical higher level thinking skills and being able to work as part of a team is something we need to prepare our students for. And I think being able to provide collaborative spaces where people take ownership or students take ownership of their learning and we as teachers can see what they've done is really powerful and will help them to develop those skills.
Fantastic. So we've mentioned a lot about then the impact it has on students. So now let's think about the impact it has on teachers. So Adriana, what have you found in terms of teacher impact? Like, has it been positive? Has it been negative? Have you had any resistance from teachers? What's been their general feedback, and how easy has it been therefore to get them on board with this?
I would say with Lumio and with Smart, it's made it extremely easy because it empowers them and it gives them different tools to make their job easier. I think ultimately we're looking at the impact that they can have throughout the body of a lesson. And so with the tools that we've empowered them with, they've been able to do just that. So we personally haven't experienced any resistance. When we go through the training modules, I find that the teachers are very engaged, which is sometimes hard with teachers doing professional development at the end of a long day. But I always find that the sessions with the smart boards are most interactive, most engaging, because this is a tool that they use almost throughout the entire day. And so I think anytime you can give a teacher a tool that makes their life easier, that makes it easier to instruct children, because this is the hardest job in the world, and we acknowledge that. And so anything we can do to help in that process, we have. And so we have a few teachers who have gone ahead and got accreditation with SMART. They went ahead and got training to be trainers themselves. And so we find that teachers are embarking on their own self-discovery journey within the platform, because it just makes them want to learn more, makes them want to explore more. Anytime we have a development session, we find again that they are going beyond what we're working on, and so they're just clicking ahead and going through the board. And so for us, it's really impacted the teachers in a very positive way, and I think it's helping to support what they're doing in the classroom in a very positive way.
Fantastic. What about yourself, Guy? How have the teachers been at Repton for you?
Yes, they've been very receptive, as you said. I think that they can see instantly the benefits, and the fact, as I mentioned earlier, it's so easy to use. If something goes wrong, they don't give up, they try again, or as you said, a child might be able to help them later. And I think a real boost that Lumio's had recently is the way you can export real-time data. So previously it was only the response quiz you could do that, whereas now there's Match Them Up, Sorted, Super Sort, and a few others where you can collect that data, as you mentioned earlier, which is really powerful for us as teachers to find out who knows what, who needs support, how can we push these higher ability students. So having the ability to export and keep that data and analyse that data really helps us as teachers just to understand our students and support them as best we can.
So we've talked about students, we've talked about teachers. The other stakeholders we have in this conversation are parents. And I found that post the pandemic, parents are concerned about screen time and technology and balancing interaction and human influence and that connection with technology. How have you found the impact then of smart boards and the way it's allowing teachers to teach? Have parents said anything particular? Are they on board with it? Any disagreements? What's been the feedback at your schools?
I think you're right. The screen time issue is one that parents say over and over again. And the response I always give is they are doing it for a purpose. They are not playing games. They are not watching YouTube videos. They are doing a piece of work. And I think us as teachers need to be making sure the work we're giving isn't just a substitution, so doing something that we would have traditionally done on the worksheet, we're now annotating a PDF. It needs to be upskilling the students. It needs to be helping them to develop some, as I said earlier, some critical thinking skills. So helping them to redo a task in a new way. So instead of writing a story, maybe they could record a performance of the story, or they could record them narrating the story. So thinking about different ways we can approach tasks that technology supports. We are so lucky. There are so many tools we can use in our classroom now, and you never have to encourage a child to want to use a device. They always want to do it. Sometimes when you're doing a piece of writing, you've got to really coax and get those pupils on board and really keep going. Whereas if they've got a device, they already want to do it. They already want to use it. So it's making sure that it's always purposeful. And I think that is the message, as I mentioned earlier, we have to say to parents is it's not a gimmick. It's not filling time. It's not them consuming. It's them creating things. And I think that's something I've really thought about in the last 3 schools where I've introduced one-to-one devices is we are doing it to help the pupils and prepare them for the future by helping them to be creators, not consumers of information that they see on screen.
I think a part of that role is also teaching responsible use, right? And so I think with SMART, that's something that helps us, because if a teacher is embedding a video with Lumio, it's already screened. We know that nothing inappropriate will show. We know that there'll be no advert showing afterwards. And so I think even with our students, when we're doing research, because we're one-to-one as well, the biggest thing we have to worry about is responsible usage. And so what are they exposed to? What are they seeing on those screens when they have the extended screen time? And so with the parents, we do acknowledge the concern, because it's a concern for us as well, as educators, as administrators, to make sure the students aren't in front of a screen, because we know there's negative impacts in other areas if they have too much screen time. But as a school, we just make sure we try to manage it as best as possible. And like you said, we're making sure that we're pushing critical thinking skills. So it isn't just essentially using the device or the smartboard as a projector only. We're making sure whatever you're doing here is something that you couldn't have done in a traditional way, or something that you will enhance, that technology will enhance by the use of it. So that's how we mitigate screen time as much as we can.
So let me tell you about Lumio, the award-winning collaborative learning platform, now available at an incredible 75% off. Now with Lumio, you'll unlock a world of interactive lessons, dynamic activities, and real-time assessments that make every class session an adventure. You can craft engaging quizzes and polls and games that captivate students' minds and foster true understanding. But Lumio isn't just about fun and games. It offers virtual workspaces for seamless collaboration, ensuring your students can work together creatively, regardless of their location. And with seamless integration into tools like Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams, transitioning to Lumio is an absolute breeze. Now, prioritizing your peace of mind, Lumio safeguards student data through full compliance with the General Data Protection Regulation, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It's an absolute digital fortress for privacy. So this Ramadan, embrace the future of education by signing up for Lumio and use the code Ramadan75 at checkout to unlock boundless learning possibilities at an unbeatable price. Back to the episode. So, putting you on the spot, I want you to think about, obviously, because you get to go through and see lots of teachers teach using these things. I want you to think about maybe 2 or 3 of the best uses you have seen of teachers using smart boards or smart technology. So, Adriana, I'll start with you. You look like you're smiling away.
I was hoping you would start with Guy.
The smile gate, I thought, she's got something already. She's got something.
Well, there's been plenty of examples, I would say, but I would say one that sticks out. We try to increase student ownership and accountability, and a part of that is by presentations. And so one thing we've done is have collaborative workspaces where students are working together. I've seen this in the middle school English class, and the students are working together to create their presentation. And with the use of the smart board, this teacher can do screen sharing with any student that she decides. And so it was just a random showing. The teacher was able to select what they were working on via Lumio and project it on the board. And when that student group saw their presentation on the screen, they were able to then come up to the class and present. And in that moment, they became the teachers. In that moment, they became the experts. And so again, as you mentioned about the group work, everybody was held accountable. Everybody was responsible for their own learning and the way that they were able to impact their own learning. And so I thought that was a very powerful tool. It's much more powerful than passing around a sheet of paper. Okay, you do part A, I do part B, but all students were required to pull together different elements in order to present in that way. And then I think on the opposite end of our school, if I'm thinking about a KG lesson, because some of these elements, when we were initially introduced to them, we said, okay, what does this look like for KG? What does this look like for our youngest users? How do they interact with these different tools? So being able to see a KG class using the Shout It Out program, they were working on compound words, and they were using emojis to do so. And so the students were picking different emojis. So sun and flower, like this is a compound word, which is sunflower. And so just really that powerful tying in, because emojis are kind of their world, right? This is how they speak. This is how they interact with each other, because most of our kindergartners have smartphones. And so this was a way to tie in something that was on their level to pull in an important concept that they have to learn. And so these are powerful ways that I've seen the smartboard being used to kind of bridge some of the gaps that we may have as educators with some of our students.
Amazing. Thank you.
I think one of the best uses I've seen is the self-paced lessons. So where you can share a Lumio lesson, so similar to a presentation with all of the resources, all of the activities, all of the tasks, and pupils can work through it at their rate. So instead of having the teacher directing everything at the front, the students can take ownership of their learning and at the speed that's appropriate to them. So again, going back to what we spoke about earlier about waiting your turn, pupils can make progress at their speed. So if they want to go over something and spend more time on a certain concept or reread a paragraph, they can. If they want to engage with one of the interactive activities more than once to make sure they've got it, that's fine. If there's a YouTube video, as you mentioned, without adverts or that horrible comment section they have at the bottom, they can review that video and you know it's safe. So allowing pupils, again, to take ownership of their lesson, learn at a rate that is appropriate for them and will help them to have a secure understanding, I think was what was really impressive about that lesson. And then just thinking about some of the tools sometimes that I use, so the protractors and the rulers, and looking particularly at angles, so being able to use an interactive protractor and then using an actual protractor, so showing how the same 3 steps about how you line up with the 0, how you hold it, how you count from the 0, being able to do that on screen on a device and with the actual concrete protractor was a brilliant way for pupils to use technology to simulate something and then do it for themselves with the concrete apparatus.
So I'm going to be devil's advocate here for a little bit, or get down to the nitty gritty of it in terms of, we're here, obviously Dubai and Al Ain, but inspections. Get inspected every year. It's a rigorous framework.
We just had 2.
Oh, how did it go?
It went well, inshallah.
Fantastic. We touch wood. Right, yeah. But the perfect time then, because obviously the use of technology and the integration of this and the rapid developing pace, there's people still sat on the fence. It's like, is this having the impact? Is this almost ticking those boxes? And I hate that, but it's a reality of where we are and the nation that we're in and the real push and strive for development. Have you found then that the feedback from observers, the feedback from the DSRB, the KHDA is positive towards the use of these things? Or has there been any kind of I'm going to say, of an older generation who maybe don't see the benefit, don't quite see the why behind it?
I think as long as it's been purposeful, I think there has always been very good feedback. So when an observer comes in, as long as that technology is being used in a purposeful way to help the pupils make progress and solidify their understanding, I think any observer will be impressed with that lesson. And similar to you, we've just had our inspection as well. And even if they are not from a techie background or they're not used to seeing these tools, if they see it being used well, they are going to be impressed by it. And I think, we have, as I said earlier, a lovely range of tools that we can use and equipment in lessons, and utilising those to help our students is really, really powerful. And yes, I think KHDA do comment, don't they, now in reports on the use of digital technologies in lessons. So it's good to see that they're recognising the important role it plays.
And we're with ADIC. So we haven't had that integration yet into our inspection framework, but we've had a positive reaction from the inspectors. I think a part of it is they're intrigued as well. So when we talk about the tools that we just spoke about, and the students are presenting their learning, the students are giving their feedback throughout lessons, our students are scanning QR codes in kindergarten to access the shouted out activities. They're very intrigued, and I think it speaks to the independence that the students are gaining, and it speaks to the critical thinking as well, where the students are able to interact with this technology, they're able to interact with the lesson in a more purposeful way. So we've had very positive feedback about it. I think as long as it isn't just a student sitting with an iPad doing a mundane task or just playing a game mindlessly that doesn't align to the learning objective. So as long as everything is purposeful and everything is aligned, we've had very positive feedback.
Fantastic. And inshallah, the feedback for both of it is positive for you both. So to wrap this up, we've got this rapid pace changing, and we haven't even talked about AI.
I don't know if we have time.
But at some point, I imagine that with the technology with Smart and what you can show and do, and on the fly, I had a little play with it. And obviously, I logged into I was using Gemini, just that, and I thought, right, can I bounce between the two? It's connected to Google. I can move this. There's integrations. If I want to change anything, put it into a slide. It's like, okay, this is pretty fast of what I can do and show to students. So there's that. That's kind of here now. It's not even at the future, but there's a rapid changing world coming. And you mentioned it. You alluded to it earlier. How do we go about then using that Smart? How do we go about using this technology that you have in your schools to prepare students for the world they're going to go into?
I think, again, it comes back to the skills, as we mentioned earlier. So not just teaching knowledge, but how to utilise the tools they've got. So developing those critical thinking skills, collaboration, being discerning of the information they find online, thinking about now we have AI pretty much everywhere in the world. Is this legitimate? Is this actually something that I can use in my work? Or is this false? Is this fake news? So thinking about the resources they're using and also about how they can use that information. So once they found it, what can I do with this? Can I make a presentation, or is that a bit boring? Could I make a website? Could I program a robot to show a story or tell a story? So thinking about how they can use the tools around them. As we know, the jobs we have today might not be around in 20 years' time. There are so many jobs we don't know that are coming out. So if we think about the last 30 odd years when the internet's come into existence, we have blogging is now a job. We have software engineers for multiple companies. We have
podcasters.
Exactly, influencers. We have all of these jobs that we didn't think would exist, and we can't say for sure what's going to be around the corner. So we just have to make sure our pupils are confident. And I think a part of our roles now is the digital literacy element. Previously, this always fell under the computing lesson or the computing teacher. But now I think every teacher has a responsibility to make sure we are teaching digital literacy, we are teaching digital safety, so that our pupils are equipped with the tools to learn and to prepare them for the future as well.
And I think for me, the interesting role in being an administrator is I have to equip the teachers as well. And so we're preparing students for a world that we're entering in ourselves, right? And so this is evolving for us in real time. ChatGPT wasn't in the conversation last school year, last academic year, even last term sometimes. And so I think as we're kind of building the plane while we're flying it when it comes to this and it comes to digital literacy. And so as a principal of a building, I have to make sure the teachers feel comfortable in learning through their mistakes. They feel comfortable in making those mistakes and just trying things out. And we're constantly testing things out. There's many things on the market. I'm sure your inboxes are flooded each day by a new program, a new software, a new guide that'll help you guide everything else. And so it's just that process. The same thing we're teaching the students is making sure we feel comfortable with it as well. You're making mistakes, you're feeling through it. You're just using your critical thinking skills in order to help you navigate this new world that we're now in.
Yeah. Definitely. Be interested because you mentioned obviously about digital literacy and digital strategy. Do you think then, and again, thinking about the use of smart boards and the use of Lumio, would you put that into digital strategy, or do you now get to a point where it's like, well, actually, that should just be part of our teaching and learning strategy?
I think everything is kind of melding together at this point. And so I think it's very hard to separate the two, if we're being honest, because it's a part of our everyday life. And so there's not long that we're separated from our phones or from our computers, and the students are the same. And so sometimes when I look at schools that have policies where they're trying to ban cell phones from coming into school, I almost laugh because it's counterproductive. And so more importantly, we have to teach students how to responsibly use their phones, because us acting like they won't bring it in and they won't have it, it's not realistic, and it's not the world that we live in now. It's not like when we were in school and seeing a cell phone wasn't as, prevalent as it was, but all of my first graders have phones now. And so it's how do we teach responsible usage? Because as adults, we have to have impulse control. We have to know how to manage the devices that we have. And I think it's our responsibility to pass that down and teach it to the students as well.
And I think you're absolutely right there. It's not saying, no, you can't do this, because as we know, if we were a teenager, if somebody says, don't do something,
they'll find a way.
Yeah, find a way, absolutely.
A way.
So it's better, as you say, to make them aware of the consequences, support them. With screen time, I always say to my students, just turn it on, just so you are aware of what you're doing. I do it as well. How much TV do you watch? How many hours of games do you, how much gaming do you do? So just helping them to be aware of their digital footprint and their use of technology, I think is really important.
Yeah, I scared some of my year 11s the other day. I was just using Copilot, and I just said, right, you think you're safe? Here you go. I'll type in my own name. Like, I know I've got a huge digital footprint, and they're like, oh, okay. It's like, let's type in one of your names. Turn off the data in terms of recording from that, so it's okay. It's like, right, let's check, and it's like, and it came up with it, and it's like, what? It's like, yeah, because you leave a massive digital footprint. And in terms of ethics, you need to understand that this is scraping the internet for information. If you put a photo out there about yourself where you're tagged in it, like Facebook, Instagram, someone else, like, it's scary. And even with my own children, like, and I'm guilty of bringing them on to podcasts or on videos, and like, and even someone else commented, it's like, I know about your children, Alex. I see them all the time, and it's like, okay. But that's the world that we are in, and it's a scary part for them to recognize and be skillful enough to navigate through. It's a challenge, isn't it? And I don't think we've got the answers for it all together now, but I think you've really alluded to some key points about, developing those skill sets rather than shying away from things. It's actually really important that we embrace them and bring them into what I'm going to call the safe space of the classroom, and so that students can try and fail and try again and then instill those kind of habits into them. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I thank you. It's been insightful, informative, and fantastic conversation. Thank you both so much for giving it the time and coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.